Elevate TV, advancing kingdom lifestyle.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Monday Morning Digest. I'm your host, 𝐁𝐀𝐓𝐓𝐋𝐈����, and this is another amazing morning. I believe that wherever you're tuned in from, you are excited and ready for an amazing conversation this morning. So I welcome you to join us, and please, those of you that are watching through our social media platforms, please share the links with your friends, and make sure you signed up, and make sure you subscribe on Elevate TV Kenya Facebook page and a YouTube channel. And welcome. The Monday Morning Digest, as you know, is I bring in a broad range of guests, and today we are very blessed to host a very special guest who I'm going to be introducing to you, shortly. And today, I believe you will enjoy this conversation. We are going to be talking about battling for the family. So welcome, and let's get this conversation going. My guest this morning is Graham Chanel. He's the president of Focus on the Family Africa. Those of you that have been around, Christian circles for many years, you probably heard about the Focus on the Family, program. Is a ministry which was founded by Dr. James Dobson, who he's late. He's just been he passed on sometime this year, and I know maybe some of you picked that up. And so Dr. James Dobson started this ministry many years ago in the US, and it's a ministry that has produced books and programs to help family. They do radio shows, and they now have an office in South Africa. And this morning I'm hosting the president of the Focus on the Family Africa, and I'll be introducing him to you, and I'm going to be asking him to tell us about their ministry and what he does, and I believe you're going to enjoy this conversation. All right, so Graham, welcome to the show. Look at this camera, and welcome our viewers, and then introduce yourself
Sure.
to our viewers. Yes.
Well, it's wonderful to be on Elevate TV. My name's Graham Chanel. I'm the CEO of Focus on the Family Africa, and it really is an absolute joy to be with you. Thank you for having me, Godfrey.
Welcome, Graham. Sorry, I think it's because of the founder. That name is still ringing in my mind. Yes. Now, Chanel, one of the reasons why I felt I really wanted to host you on this show, because we've just concluded what we call a family convocation in our church, and we were talking about it was called Family Impact Convocation, and we were hosting a guest from the US, plus of course our own leaders here, Apostle David Juma, and we had a very intense ministry talking about the family, strengthening the family, and so this conversation fits in that frame, and I feel that you are in Kenya at the right time. Then when we can go back to that focus on the family. I love that idea of focus on the family. So I want you to tell us about the history of Focus on the Family, and then how did you get involved in it, and what drew you into this ministry, and again, its expanse and length, and all that, and the programs that
Sure.
you provide and the
Yeah.
materials. Yes.
Well, as you said, Focus started in the United States with a man named Dr. James Dobson. He was a pediatric psychiatrist or psychologist, and so he was working with children and just seeing the devastation of the breakdown of the family and the effect it had on children, and had this real passion to step in and do what he could to help preserve and strengthen the family unit. And so he started writing books, and then started getting invited to speak all over the country, and then realized he needed to make sure he didn't take his focus off his own family, and saw radio as a wonderful opportunity to be able to reach lots of people without having to travel all around the country. And he started a radio program called Focus on the Family. And that just grew, and it boosted this ministry. And that was, I think, about 48 years ago. And sometime in that, in the early-ish days, it wasn't that what I appreciate about the model of Focus on the Family, it wasn't like some other American organizations that want to go and kind of plant a flag in every country they can. The model was, we'll go where we are invited, and we'll work with local organizations and people who are saying, we need this content, we want to help families thrive in our own nation. And so that's how the international arm of Focus on the Family was birthed. And so we are one of the older offices in South Africa. There was actually many years ago, there was an office in Kenya, in Nairobi. But in South Africa, we've been going for 32 years, or 33 actually this year. And essentially we operated as a separate entity from Focus in the US, but we have an agreement with them. We license the name and the brand, and we get a lot of support in terms of the content, and we connect with them on an ongoing basis. But our mandate, as it were, is to help families thrive in our nation and continent. So we are Focus on the Family Africa, and we want to do whatever we can and make the decisions that we need to make to help strengthen families on the continent of Africa, but with the vision and values of Focus on the Family, and with help in terms of the content that we can get. And so in terms of kind of what we do, ultimately we're a Christian ministry dedicated to helping families thrive. And so we provide help and resources for married couples to build healthy, thriving marriages, for parents to raise their kids with biblical values, and then also for the youth to grow in character. And we also want to promote the value of marriage and family to a generation that often these days is not seeing it modeled for them. So we're on radio.
Okay.
That's one of our greatest reaches. So we provide radio programs to radio stations across Africa.
Okay.
And there are multiple different kinds of programs. There's longer format and shorter format, and kids programs that go out on radio stations across the continent. We've got some television programs. All of the media is also now accessible online. So we've got a website that's just completely full of content, articles, videos, audio content. There's online tools, assessments. You can take a marriage assessment and it gives you a report, how you're doing in your marriage, areas that you can improve. So lots of online content available. Resources, physical resources, so all the books that Dr. James Dobson started with, and there's now thousands of really good Christian authors that are writing biblically based family strengthening resources. So we make those available. We've got a little bookstore, but we make those available online as well. Counseling, so we provide counseling for people. We've got a counseling center and a team of amazing counselors, some on staff, some volunteer. We've got a referral network around South Africa and into other parts of Africa. And we do online counseling. So that was something we learned during COVID, that this was a way that we could actually connect with people online wherever they are.
Yeah.
And so we're counseling. Most of what we do as Focus is we put out really good family strengthening content to help families. But we know that every family goes through struggles. Every individual goes through difficult times. And so we want to be there to answer the call, to put an arm around them, to give encouragement and advice from a biblical perspective, but both counseling best practices, so the science of counseling with the biblical, recognizing that there's a spiritual need in every person as well.
Okay.
And then we do events and seminars, marriage seminars, parenting seminars. Last week we were doing some parenting events in Cape Town and East London. And we've got some more coming up, and we do that from time to time. We're out at various different churches and conferences. And then our biggest team actually at Focus on the Family is what we call community engagement.
Okay.
And so it's a team of facilitators that are out every day in the communities, often in schools. We've got a whole lot of young people that are delivering youth programs.
Yes.
Our biggest youth program is called No Apologies, and it's around the truth about sex, lies, and the truth is what the kind of byline is.
Yes.
And so talking about abstinence and sexual purity, but really at its heart, it's about building character.
Yes.
It's about identity. It's helping these kids recognize that the decisions that they make today have an influence and an impact on their future. And we want to also promote, again, the value of marriage and family to this generation. And then we've got other programs. We work with orphans and vulnerable children.
Okay.
We work with child-headed households. And then we've got a fantastic parenting program that we run in various different communities as well. So there's a lot going on at Focus. And yeah, it keeps us busy, but it's so vital. The family is, the first institution that God ordained and created was family. Before government, before church, He created family. And there's something about His design for family. We know that the enemy hates. When he created Adam and Eve, and He joined them together and He blessed them, and there's something about how that unity, that union, that communion of the marriage, and then He said have children, and this family unit that depicts the image of God. And of course we're each individual image bearers of God, but in family there's something special about how we bear the image of the triune God.
That's true.
He is in community and fellowship and community within Himself, within the Trinity, and the enemy looks down at marriage and family, and he sees, in fact, there's a painting, a beautiful painting that I'll often show when I do presentations, and it depicts Adam and Eve in this loving embrace before the fall, and Lucifer is flying over them, and he's looking down at them with this scowl on his face, and it's like he's seeing them and he's saying, look at these two that are loving each other, and there's this unity and communion and fellowship. I know somebody else that shares that kind of unity and communion and fellowship. It's the Trinity, and I hate them, and so I want to break this up because it's an image, it's a representation of God. And so we recognize there's an attack on family, but we also recognize this is a beautiful gift that God has given us. It's part of His design, it's part of His purpose, and we get to lift that up, and we get to strengthen and redeem and restore families in Africa. And what a joy it is to be a part of that vision.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's really amazing. And I picked up a lot of, some of the programs you've noted. But I think at the heart of it, like you've said, is the idea of helping families thrive. And that has really remained as the focus of the family.
Yes.
So to speak. Yeah. So that's an amazing story of the fact that family, they really need defending. In fact, I think that the church itself would be weaker, to the extent that families are weak. So as the church, as families thrive, so the church will thrive.
Absolutely.
So the nations will thrive. Now, of course, I believe that one of the things that, and I want to take you back, I was, I've interacted. I haven't read all the books, But I think one of the very first book that Dr. James Dobson wrote very early on was Dare to Discipline. And I checked it out, Amazon, 1975. You know, that was a long time ago. And you know, the idea of children discipline, and I want us to talk about that because we're talking about, you know, defending the family.
Yeah.
The idea of, you know, developing children.
Yeah.
You told me that you are a father of 3 girls, and that's amazing. That's amazing. That's amazing. And they are just within the teens. So you must be having quite a task there. Raising 3 daughters, and this is the time that you really have to look after them. You have to be in your best behavior. You know, they are looking up to you.
Yeah.
When girls are growing up, they look up to their father. And so every step you make, everything you do, how you treat your mom, very, very important. You're passing on to them very, very solid values.
Yeah.
Now, so speaking about discipline, let's talk about the idea of discipline, disciplining the families. And a little bit of context to that is the fact that I know there have been legislative moves in recent times where governments, you know, are saying, no, look, you can't spank your child. That I know began in the West, in the US and other places. I'm sure in South Africa probably, if you try and spank your child, you probably might go to jail or something like that. So how do we, as Christian families, discipline our children in spite of some of those, you know, issues within the nation, the conversation about, you know, that look, you cannot, anything above certain level is maybe child abuse. How do you deal with that?
Yeah. Well, I think it's always quite a sensitive issue to tackle. So from a focus perspective, we do believe that parents should have the right to discipline their children.
Okay.
And so, you know, where the state enforces those laws, that's preventing parents from disciplining their children. However, I understand where the state gets it from, because there have been cases of abuse. There have been cases, even if it's not abuse, where parents have disciplined in anger, which is not correct. And so that's why those laws are put in place. The other thing I want to say is really that corporal punishment kind of fits only within a pretty small window where it's most effective, somewhere around between 2 and 3 years old. When they're younger than that, you know, it's not helpful to hurt them, or you could do damage to them if you're spanking. And older than 3, they start to begin to understand reason, where other forms of discipline become actually more effective, whether it's the, you know, time out or the grow good corner, or whatever you may call it. And so I think so where those laws are in place, I think there's a lot of tools at our disposal to still bring about discipline. And discipline, it's not punishment. I think it's good to separate the two. Punishment is creating harm for a past offense.
Okay.
Whereas discipline is future focused. It's actually the same root as the word disciple. And so it's about training and correcting and guiding. And so sometimes there's those consequences that are enforced. Sometimes it's allowing natural consequences. You know, the child forgets their lunch at home, and they phone and say, oh, can you drop off my lunch? And you say, no, we don't have time to get to the school. That's just a natural consequence. It's not that they've done anything horribly wrong, but it's part of life. Remembering to, you know, next day they're not going to forget their lunch because they've had a consequence around it. So it's also recognizing with discipline, it's recognizing the temperament of the child, because every child is different. So it's not even that, you know, I've got 3 kids, they're all different. And so how I discipline and train and equip one might be different to the other. Not because I want to be unfair and you get this and you get something different, but Some kids are they're wired for the fight. They've got that temperament that says, you know, I'll take you on, and some are far more compliant. And so how you go about the training and correcting is going to be different based on the child, based on their age. Ages and stages are very important. So we talked about the 2 to 3, but you know, in the early days, when they're very young, you're there to nurture them. Then you move into this teacher training space, and then you become more of a coach as they get into the teenage years, and ultimately you can become their friend, but you become more of a mentor, and your authority comes down as the kids grow.
Yes.
It starts high because, you know, when they're little, you're guiding them and telling them where they've got to be, when they've got to be. But as they get older, the authority goes down, but the influence needs to keep going up. And all of that is tied to relationship. Okay. So even within discipline, sometimes the kids will not be happy. Most times they're not going to be happy about the discipline, but they recognize, hopefully, even God says He disciplines the ones He loves. They know that love is there, and you build that relationship with your child so that when they're older and you don't have that authority anymore, when I say authority, you don't have any control.
Yes.
And you never really have control over kids. Actually, the only person you have control over is yourself. But when you've had relationship, when you've built relationship with your kids, then you still have influence. So even when they're making decisions as young adults, and they look to you for that input, and you're able to give input into their lives. So building relationship with your kids is vital, even though you're called as a parent to discipline them, to train, to correct, to guide.
Okay, yeah, I just want to do a follow-up. So are you saying, for example, as children grow older, say like 10, 15, those ages, once they reach, early teenage and mid-teenage, that you focus more on being, or on developing influence with your children, so you move away from disciplining in the sense of you must sit down, eat your food, eat the vegetables, and all that. You stop playing, drop your phone, to where you influence. So I would like you to really speak a little bit more about that disciplining. Does it become like, are you a coach as a father of your children? So expand on that a little bit more.
I've heard one of the people that we get out from the UK as a speaker at events, she talks about parenting with elastic.
Okay.
And the analogy there is, the truth is, we're not raising children, we're raising future adults.
Okay.
And so we're trying to raise these kids to be at a point where they don't need us anymore.
Okay.
And so that's got to be a gradual letting go, and giving them more authority, giving them more independence. So the elastic is that, that stretch as they grow older. And so we're still absolutely involved. We still, the love doesn't change, but as they move towards independence, we've got to allow that independence, and so that authority shifts, and we go from, like you gave that analogy of, no, this is what you're going to eat, when you're going to eat it, to you've now starting to make your own decisions within reason. You're still part of the family. You still but right from when they're young, I think there's got to be an emphasis on what are the values of the family, and what are most important. Because if you in some senses, you've got to choose your battles.
Yes.
Because you can't fight every battle. You can't expect your kids to follow 1,000 different rules, and that's what often the authoritarian parent will do. You've got to brush your teeth 5 times this way and 10 times that way, and your shoes must be laid out in order, and it's do this way and that way. And when they're young, they might kind of toe the line, but they're going to get to a point where they're going to rebel because they need that independence. The flip side of that is the permissive parent. He doesn't set any rules, barely, you know, and they just kind of, oh, you just be free and you do whatever you want, and you know, they hit their friend on the head with a cricket bat, and oh, you're just expressing yourself, that's okay, and there's no rules. But the kid in that home doesn't feel safe, because boundaries actually create safety.
Okay.
There was a preschool that had a boundary fence around the school field, and there was this energetic theorist in the early days of the progressive education movement, and he said, no, we've got to remove this chain link fence because it's restrictive. The kids feel, you know, that they've got this restrictive boundary. So they took the fence away, but you know what happened? The kids, not only did they not venture towards the edge of the field, they stayed huddled up towards the middle. Whereas before, when they had the fence, they were free to roam within that boundary. So boundaries create freedom.
Okay.
And so the permissive parent doesn't give any boundaries. The authoritarian parent gives too many. And these kids are just, they're in jail half the time. And so the assertive parent is really the in between, and that's what you're aiming at. And essentially, it's saying, say what you mean and mean what you say.
Okay.
Have as few rules as are necessary, and let those rules be around the things that are important to you as a family.
Yes.
So, you know, is it, you know, your kid comes home and they've cut their hair shorter than you would have wanted? Is that the most important thing compared to they told a lie? You know.
Yes.
You discipline those things that are, hey, we believe in honesty. We're a family that we're about integrity. We're about kindness. We're about generosity. What are the things that are your values as a family? And you make the strong rules around those things: respect, integrity, and the other things. It's not to say you don't care about any of the other things, but you're not coming down hard on every other little thing that's maybe not that important, because in that you can have that influence. Your kids know what really is important to you, because
Yes.
if you come hard on them for when their shoes not in the right order in their cupboard, it's the same as when they tell a lie at school. They don't even know, you know, what's really important. So
Yes.
you want your kids to know what are the real important issues. And so, yeah, and then build that relationship, which is hard to do when you're that authoritarian parent, because the kid's just looking for the counting down days till they get to 18 and they can get out of there. You want them when they're 20, 30 to still come back and say, Mom, Dad, what do you think about this? And you've got the ability to speak into their lives.
Absolutely. I'm loving this. And you know, you've actually talked about boundaries, and but the other thing I've also actually seen, and I want to ask you something just before we wrap this up, about developing assertiveness with your children.
Yeah.
I mean, so say you go with your 10-year-old to the dentist, and you want them to explain what's going on and all that, and you as a parent, you want to see if they can actually manage a conversation with the doctor. Stuff like that. Now, my director is telling me we need to take a break, but I want you to hold that thought. Okay. I want us to talk about how do you develop an assertive child, so that this young man or young woman, young girl, that when they go out there into the world, they can speak up for themselves. They can take on the challenges of life. That's an important question. We're going to be coming back to that. So we take a short break. When we come back, Graham here is going to be talking about how we deal with the issue of making sure our children are assertive, they are strong, they can stand on their own 2 feet. All right, so don't go away. We're coming back to this conversation shortly.
Anytime, anywhere. Access inspiration that never switches off. Stuck in traffic? Elevate your mood and own the moment. Just looking busy? Make every second count. Tap into Kingdom content instead. One tap, instant power, real transformation. Download the Elevate TV app now. Exclusively on Google Play.
Elevate your brand with Elevate TV, a premier media station in the country. We specialize in video production, live coverage, advertising and social media marketing. We do quality production for YouTube videos, podcasts and live events. Transform your vision into reality with creativity and precision. Call us today and elevate your story on 0705 872 237.
Welcome back. This is the Monday Morning Digest, and we are having an amazing conversation here, talking about how to defend or battling for the family. I know we be talking about children. That's where we start from, and why my guest here is the president of Focus on the Family Africa, and this organization is an organization that provides resources and ministry for the families and focusing on the family. And I'm sure, if you've been following this conversation, we have talked so much about, of course, children and bringing them up. And before we went to the break, Graham, I raised the issue of assertiveness.
Yeah.
One of the marker of a good parent, that you're doing a good job, is if when you take your 10-year-old son or daughter to the doctor, he can actually express himself and explain himself to the doctor. And as you watch the young man or a young girl, explain to the doctor very respectively and very clearly, and he's not afraid, you feel very proud as a parent. How do you develop that kind of child?
I think there's so much in that, and you're right, it's something we want to aim for. I think the starting point is really that child knows who they are and that they know that they're loved. Because I think often the child that's shy and reserved and not able to speak is because they're insecure. Mm-hmm. And so part of it as a parent is constantly reinforcing, you are my child, you are loved. Mm-hmm. You are God's child. You are loved. There's nothing you can do to make us love you more, and there's nothing you can do to make us love you less. No matter what happens, you are loved. Mm-hmm. That security breeds confidence. Mm-hmm. When they know that, and they also know who they are. I'm a child of this family, and I'm a child of the King, and so I can have that confidence. But it does go beyond that. There is a requirement to train them in that art of conversation. I think of it, and I've heard people talk about the game of tennis. Mm-hmm. Tennis, you hit the ball and then the ball comes back, and your opponent hits the ball back, and there's this back and forward over the net. And conversation is a bit like that. You ask a question and you train your child to respond and then ask another question back so that it doesn't just die. But part of that is also the art of asking good questions, and it's hard because I've got the teenagers, and if I ask the wrong question, I say, "How was school?" The answer I get is fine. And it's like the conversation just died, And so it's figuring out what are the ways that you can ask a question where you're likely to get more response back. Hey, what were your friends talking about today at school? Now, they can't just say fine. They can't just give a one-word answer. They've got to think about what was the conversation and then give something back. And then it's easier to keep that conversation going. You know, Jesus, it's interesting this, hopefully I don't get it wrong, but Jesus asked, I think something like over 300 questions recorded in the Gospels. He only answered directly 3.
Okay.
And so there's this idea of the importance of learning how to ask good questions. And so we train our kids that. And so the confidence of knowing who they are, and then B, the training of this is how we have a conversation, this is how we show respect for other people, so that when they're at the dentist and the dentist asks them what's going on, or just says hello, they can also say, hi, how are you? And they can actually have a conversation with the dentist, and we do feel proud. Not that it's about us feeling proud, but it's, again, it's training them up for the day that we're going to ultimately release them. And we want them to be able to function in a world on their own without us. And so a really good point for parents to be working on that with their kids.
Absolutely, absolutely. Very, very important actually to develop your children, and you can see them flourishing. You can tell that your kids are confident, your kids are able to express themselves. And so among the many things that, and I love the way you distinguish between punishment and discipline.
Yeah.
So I think parents should be focusing on disciplining their children, not just punishing them. Punishment is not really the focus. Wonderful. Now I want us to turn and focus now on the family at large. But before we talk about the relationship between husband and wife, let's talk about homeschooling. You're from South Africa. You've been working in South Africa. And I think one of the challenges that is coming up now with many Christian families is as they take their children to public schools, private school, whatever kind of schools, there is now a growing concern among many parents that, look, my kids are not getting the kind of education they need, or rather the education environment is becoming contaminated with a lot of ideas. We know we're living in the new world, the woke new world, and there are a lot of ideas that are being taught to young people that we as parents might not want our children to actually kind of like interact with some of these ideas. Talk about how do you advise parents who really want to make sure that they raise a strong, godly children and a family. What do they do? What's your opinion? What's going on there?
Sure, absolutely. You know, we again as a ministry, we really advocate for school choice. And what I mean by that is that parents, it's really for the parent to make that decision, what they believe is in the best interest of the child. I think sometimes homeschooling can be a phenomenal way to go for parents, and for those reasons they're saying we just don't want our kids exposed to the things that that other kids are being exposed to in this school setting. Other parents are finding private schools maybe that are Christian schools, or sometimes, at least in South Africa, there are a lot of government schools that are still they haven't embraced this whole woke agenda. But whatever the choice is, I think what's important for parents is to keep that conversation with their kids. So if let's say the kids are going to a public school, and that's a choice that they make, and it might be the best choice, the right choice for their child. Maybe there's sport opportunities and friendship groups that are formed within that space, and it's going to be the best move for them. But if they know that they're going to come up against some of these ideas, that at home they're speaking about this, so that when the child comes, is faced with whether it's a teacher or another child that's saying this is the way, that they can say, no, that's not true, or that's not what I believe, because I've been taught this by my parents. That can go for multiple different things, whether it's the woke agenda, or whether it's we do some events with a lady who speaks about, she started a movement called the Chat, and it was all about started by having conversations with the kids early about sex and sexuality, And she talks about this law of first mention. And that's this idea that you want your child, the first mention of these important issues, so something like sex, is an important issue because it's a big part of even God's design for humanity, that this is designed to be something beautiful for within the context of marriage. It's part of his gift to us. It's part of his design for humanity. But if that first mention comes from a kid in the schoolyard with a mobile, with a cell phone that's got pornography on it, and and this is the first exposure to what sex is, that's going to be that's going to warp that child's mind around that idea and that issue. So you want that first mention to come from you as a parent. You want to be speaking the truth about these issues with your kids. So whatever those issues are, that we don't wait too long, that we use the opportunities, whether it's watching a movie together and there's a scene within the movie and we go, that doesn't really represent our values as a family. But it can be a teachable moment. We can say, let's pause the movie here for a moment, or at the end of the movie, remember there was that scene, this happened, what do you think? What do you think was going on there? Let's talk about this. What does God say about this idea? What do we believe about this? So that they, as kids, they start to form. This is what I know about gender. This is what I know about sex. This is what I know and understand about how God made us and His purpose for us. And so that when they're exposed, because even if you opt for the homeschool option, also fantastic option, we can't bubble wrap our kids.
Absolutely.
And at some point they're going to come across and they're going to be exposed to these various different things. And so when we want to prepare them so that when they are exposed to these things, they're not caught off guard, they're not completely surprised. They go, my parents talked about this. We know that the world offers this, but we also know what God says, and we know that what He says is the truth. And
Absolutely.
we believe the truth. And so when that lie comes, so even if they are exposed to pornography, let's say, which is unfortunately likely a reality for most kids at school, they can go, I know what that is because I've been told about it. I know that that's a false view of what sex is about. And I know what the true view is, and I reject that, and I embrace the truth. And I can actually walk away from that because I know that that's a counterfeit of what actually is good and right and true.
Absolutely. That's a very good thing to talk about. I love that, the law of first mention. Those of you parents that are watching this program, I tell you what, you better make sure that that your children, the first person they hear from, or rather their exposure, the first exposure or conversation about this matter, sex, sexuality, and all that, comes from you, and not from some untrusted sources. So the law of first mention, that's an amazing concept. Now, let's talk about the husband-wife relationship. Again, battling for the family. You know very well, we live we live in a world where families face the institution of the family is in jeopardy. Let me say that in the sense that divorce is becoming like normalized. So it's like this grand option. So if there's a challenge between a husband and a wife, and or maybe just some neglect, neglect can come in many dimensions, including sexual neglect or something like that. How do you deal with these challenges where there is a challenge, there is a problem of this marriage is shaking up, maybe even including infidelity? focus on the family. I think Dr. James Dobson did write a book a long time ago, What Wives Wish Their Husbands Knew About Women. And I was checking out some of the comments and in Amazon, and I realized, wow, that was quite a dive. I mean, he touched something very, very, very profound.
Yeah.
Now, you've been in this space dealing with families. Tell us about how should we navigate around some of these issues?
Yeah. Look, I think that there's big issues, like you mentioned, infidelity. There's real crisis that happens within marriage, and often in those cases we really believe wholeheartedly in counseling, in having a Christian counsel that can help journey through those very difficult times. And that might be true of other issues as well, but a lot of the time marriages are struggling, and it's not necessarily a crisis issue. It's just that they'll say things like, we've fallen out of love. But love isn't the issue, because God said God is love. And as Christians we have access to that love. So that isn't the issue. It's actually that their hearts have become hard. And that's what happens within marriage. Whatever it is, whether it's conflict, whether it's just disagreements, whether it's busyness and stress, whether it's a failing to communicate, over time these hearts become hard. And they become closed to one another, and then they're hardened, and then it's often in those cases that the easy option is to file for divorce. And when we do marriage like conferences and marriage retreats, we often start with this question: what do you think is the secret to a great marriage? And we'll
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, and people will raise their communication, and it's intimacy, and it's keeping God at the center, which of course is vital. But the answer that we give, we say, actually, if something else is missing, none of those things will happen. And that something else is two open hearts. And so, as I said, over time, when there's all this disillusionment, those hearts close to one another, when there's pain. And so our desire in marriage has got to be, how do I keep my heart open to my spouse? And how do I create an environment where she feels safe to open her heart to me? And it is about that safety and security, because when you don't feel safe and you feel like you need to be guarded, that's when your heart closes. And so there's lots of things that we can then coach couples on, ways that they can help to keep those hearts open, even within conflict. Because conflict, obviously, when you're having conflict, it's particularly how you manage that conflict. It causes those hearts to close. And when you're having lots of conflict, those hearts just they stay closed, and then they become hard, and they get to that point where they just say, let's call it quits. But there's ways and techniques that we can teach and that we can provide as a ministry, and content that's all available on our website to help couples keep those hearts open, to manage conflict in a way that doesn't cause those hearts to harden and close, where actually conflict can become an opportunity to learn something about your spouse. What are her deeper inner desires and her fears and her inner wrestles, because often that's what's underneath the surface of the conflict. And so when we can dig a little bit deeper, we can do the work of saying, I want to understand what's at the root of this. Actually, that can bring us even closer together. But it has to start with that intentionality and a commitment to saying, I'm going to keep my heart open. I'm going to do whatever I can. Part of that is communication. It's saying we can't just allow ourselves to only communicate around budgets and logistics, who's picking up which child from what sporting thing, and where, because that you have to do that stuff. It's part of life, but we were created for so much more. We were created to actually go deeper, and so we've got to make the time and put the effort in to say, let's sit down have a couple of chairs, have a cup of coffee, and let's just talk about what's going on in your heart. What are the things that are stressing you out? What are the things that you're excited about?
Right.
Because if I can do that on an ongoing, regular basis, that's another way to keep those hearts open to each other.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. Yeah, so a marriage, especially when you have young children, it can become almost like a logistic company.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
You're just coordinating. You're very busy.
Yeah.
Who is picking the babies? Who is doing this?
Yeah.
Who is doing the other?
Yeah.
How long are you going to be away?
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it has to be more than that.
Yeah.
And I love what you're talking about, keeping our hearts open.
Yeah.
I think that, and I would like to hear, I would like you to speak to this idea. You see, the Bible tells husbands to love their wives. Do you think that the modern men and women kind of don't seem to get the depth of what this love is?
Yeah.
Because in Ephesians, where, the Bible talks about the husband loving the wife, it compares that love with the love of Christ.
Yeah.
Do you think, again, perhaps love is being misunderstood? On the other side, the modern people tell us love is chemistry. So maybe it has nothing to do with the faith. It's just some biological system.
Yeah.
Do we have a misunderstanding on at the depth, the true biblical view of love?
Yeah.
The kind of love that sacrifices.
Yeah. I think so. I think it's, I've seen it generationally, culturally. There is often a misunderstanding, particularly, I think, among men. Mm-hmm. There's this kind of old school mentality, or sometimes it's cultural. I provide, and that's kind of my job. That's the way I love you. I provide, but when I come home, your job is then to serve me. But in these days, most often, husbands and wives are working, but it's still like the husband thinks, no, I've done my job, and now the wife must cook and clean and look after the kids, and it's wrong. It's wrong, because, as you said, Jesus said, the Bible speaks about loving like Christ loves the church. He laid himself down. He served, and so it's a call to a much higher form of love. There's a book by Emerson Eggerichs which is called Love and Respect, and it's fantastic because it speaks to that Ephesians 5, which is I think often misunderstood, because it's just like, well, I love my wife, but she must respect me, and it's this kind of submission, and but it just speaks to wives naturally love because they're wired to love. But what the husband really needs to feel is that respect. And women are wired to need this love. And so often when we're not showing love in the way our wives need to feel that love, they can respond in a way that makes us feel like we're not being respected. And we get into this, he calls it the crazy cycle of a lack of love and a lack of respect. But I think as men particularly, we need to take the lead and say that actually loving is laying down our lives. There's an aspect of submission in that. We submit to one another. It's saying, well, how do I put my family first? How do I put my spouse first? How do I love her in a way that there's another phenomenal resource called The 5 Love Languages. It's by Dr. Gary Chapman, and he speaks about all of us having a different way in which we feel loved most. So is it words of affirmation? Do I feel loved when you tell me how amazing I am? Is it acts of service? Do I feel loved if you do things for me? Is it gifts? Is it quality time? Is it physical touch? Those are the 5. But the problem is often I'm going to love in the way that I feel loved. So if it's words of affirmation that I need, I'll love somebody in that. Wow, you're so amazing, you're beautiful. But actually, their primary love language is acts of service. And they feel like, oh, he keeps telling me that I'm amazing, but he never lifts his finger to do the dishes. And so we've got to do the work to understand how is it that our spouse feels loved. And then we've got to do the hard work of saying, even if it's not my natural, I want to love her in a way that makes her feel loved. Because what happens is, he talks about a love tank. You know, when we love people in the way that they feel love, we fill that love tank.
Wow.
And that obviously through the days that tank gets depleted, and you know, in life and it's kids, and so when we have the opportunity, we want to do everything we can to fill that love tank, and that's another way to just build that marriage relationship.
Wonderful. Now we have a few minutes remaining to wrap this up. What do you do? How do you deal with the issue of divorce? As a ministry that you've been dealing with and helping families and supporting families, it's a ministry that is really focused on the family.
Yeah.
What's been your experience dealing with families that are at the precipice of divorce, and have you been successful, and what are some of the lessons you've learned?
Yeah. I think we acknowledge and recognize that not every marriage is going to stay together. Because we see that divorce happens, but we want to, with every couple, say to them, let's take divorce out of your vocabulary. Let's do everything we can to commit to this institution that's a lifelong institution of marriage. In terms of the success, one of the initiatives that is being run in the US, and we've started in a much smaller way, is a marriage intensive for couples that are in a crisis. And so these are couples that are literally, they've got divorce papers written up but they feel like maybe let's just give it one last chance, and they come to this intensive called Hope Restored, and over 5 days there's counselors that work with them, and they work through a series of a kind of modules as well as counseling that takes place, and the success rate with that has been 80% of those couples stay together.
Oh, wow.
And so we've taken that model. We use it in a couple of ways. We run it as a marriage enrichment, a conference and a marriage enrichment retreat, teaching those same principles, that content that can help save marriages can also help prevent marriages ever getting to that place where they need to be saved, and just build healthy marriages. We've also got a program called Marriage 911. Again, based on those same principles, and that's actually for churches. So a church can take this content, have a marriage mentor or marriage champion couple in their church, or many, depending on the size of the church, a number of different marriage mentors. And then this kit equips this marriage mentor couple to journey with another couple that's really battling and going through a difficult time. And they don't have to be counselors, they don't have to be experts, because the content is the expert really, but they've got to commit to the process, and the couple also got to commit to saying, you know, we will give ourselves to this process, and then it's over 16 weeks that they meet together, the couple that's in trouble and the mentor couple, and work through this course, this curriculum. And we're only just busy releasing that, so we haven't got the stats on that, but it's built on those same principles that has that 80% success rate. And so we want to encourage couples that there is hope. There really is hope, and don't think that there's no hope, and start believing those lies. Maybe I just married the wrong person, or recognize that we serve a God who's able to do more than we could ask or imagine. And when we give ourselves to His principles outlined in His Word, and when we do that for ourselves, because we can only control ourselves, there's nothing I can do to make my spouse do anything. But if I say, I'm going to do this, often that has an impact on the relationship. And we can see marriages saved as a result of that.
Absolutely. That's a very nice place to end this conversation. And you have blessed us so much. You've blessed us so much. And I love that, final bit that yes, there is hope and there are programs. I want you to look at this camera and just give a final parting shot to those that are watching, and then please tell them where to go to access some of these resources. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you for watching. It's been fantastic to be a part of this show. Again, I'm Graham Schnell from Focus on the Family Africa, and the best place to connect with us is our website. It's safamily.co.za. safamily.co.za. It's a website full of content, thousands of articles, there's audio, there's video, there's online tools, and there's ways that you can connect with us and find out more about all of these programs and resources that we make available. And we'd love for you to connect with us.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Graham Schnell, for coming on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all we had for you today. This is the Monday Morning Digest. I've been your host, Godfrey Gishoke. We'll see you another time, same channel. Keep it elevated, and God bless you. Have a great week. Bye for now.